The barbell trembled in her grip, sweat beading on her temples as she pushed through the final rep. I stood behind her, hands hovering just inches from her hips, ready to spot if she faltered. Our eyes met in the mirror's reflection, hers defiant, mine steady. But inside, a storm brewed. As captain, I enforced the rules that kept us unbreakable. Yet here, in this empty weight room, her proximity unraveled me. Her breath grazed my neck when she whispered, "Our rules don't apply when no one is watching." Time fractured. My composure, that iron facade, cracked under the weight of her words, her nearness. I adjusted her form, fingers lingering on her waist, electric and forbidden. It began weeks earlier, in the stark fluorescence of the locker room, where the air hung heavy with the scent of leather and liniment. I was lacing my cleats, methodically, as always, each loop a ritual to summon the focus that had carried me through seasons of unrelenting pressure. As captain of the Eclipse, our professional women's soccer team, I embodied the stoic core, unyielding, authoritative, the one who silenced doubts with a glance. Teammates filed in around me, their chatter a familiar hum. But my mind was already on the field, mapping strategies against our next rivals. That's when she entered, Ilara Voss, the rookie sensation scouted from some under-the-radar European league. Brilliant, they said, with a vision for the game that bordered on precognition. But brilliant came with edges, and hers were sharp. She dropped her bag with a thud that echoed too loudly, drawing eyes. Tall, lean, with dark hair cropped short and eyes like polished obsidian, she moved with a rebel's grace, untethered, unapologetic. "Morning," she said to no one in particular, her voice carrying a faint accent that curled around the vowels like smoke. I nodded once, but she met my gaze directly, a spark of challenge flickering there. No deference, no wide-eyed awe for the captain, just assessment, as if she were sizing up the entire room, me included. The others murmured welcomes, but I felt the shift. She was the variable, the one who could either elevate us or fracture the fragile unity we'd forged. Practice that day was brutal, the summer sun baking the turf into a relentless furnace. I led drills with precision, barking orders to sharpen our formations, short passes chaining into lethal counters. Ilara slotted in seamlessly at first, her footwork poetry in motion, anticipating gaps before they formed. But then came the scrimmage, and her defiance surfaced. When I called for a conservative buildup, she broke lines instead, threading a risky through ball that left our defense exposed. The whistle blew sharp. Coach Ramirez's face tightened. "Voss, team play, not solo heroics." She shrugged, wiping sweat from her brow, but her eyes found mine across the field. Apologetic? No, defiant still, laced with something unspoken. A quiet invitation to understand her fire. The accidental collision happened mid-drill, our bodies colliding in a tangle of limbs as we both lunged for a loose ball. Her shoulder slammed into mine, sending us sprawling. Pain flared in my ribs, but it was her weight against me, brief and unyielding, that lingered. The heat of her skin through our jerseys, the shared gasp of breath. I pushed up first, offering a hand. She took it, her grip firm, calluses mirroring my own. "Sorry, Captain," she said. But her smile was crooked, testing. In that moment, awareness bloomed, unbidden. The curve of her jaw, the way her chest rose and fell. I pulled away too quickly, masking it with a curt, "Watch your positioning." The team resumed, but the field felt smaller, charged. Post-training, as the others dispersed to recovery sessions, I lingered on the sidelines, ostensibly reviewing footage on my tablet. Really, I watched her, from afar, mapping the subtle tells, the way she stretched, arching her back with unguarded abandon, The flicker of isolation when laughter erupted without her. She was brilliant, yes, but adrift, her rebellion a shield against vulnerabilities I recognized too well. The ache of being the outsider in a world that demanded conformity. Our league's code loomed large. No internal romances, no distractions that could tarnish the Eclipse's pristine image. As captain, I upheld it fiercely. One slip and sponsors fled, careers crumbled. Yet she pulled at that resolve, an undercurrent I couldn't name. The inciting incident came at the team meeting that evening. Coach pulled me aside, his voice low. "You're mentoring Voss. One-on-ones. Starting tomorrow. Tame that fire. Make it ours." My stomach twisted. Proximity I hadn't anticipated. Sessions that would force us into isolation. I nodded, stoic as ever. But inside, the warning bells rang. How to guide without touching the edges of what simmered? The transition to evening waits felt inevitable. The gym's dim lights, a sanctuary from prying eyes. She arrived late, towel slung over her shoulder, that same defiant stride. "Ready to spot me, Captain?" Her tone was light, but her eyes held the promise of deeper currents. As she loaded the bar, I positioned behind her, the air thickening with anticipation. The first real test of boundaries in this charged, unspoken dance. She racked the weights with a metallic clang that reverberated through the empty gym, the sound sharp against the hum of distant air conditioning. I positioned myself behind her for the squats, feet planted wide, hands extended but not yet touching, close enough to catch the bar if it dipped, far enough to maintain the illusion of distance. The mirrors lining the walls reflected us back endlessly, a hall of accusations. Captain and rookie, authority and rebellion, trapped in this ritual of strength. Her form was impeccable at first, descending slow and controlled, thighs straining against the spandex of her shorts. But as the set progressed, her breaths grew ragged, syncing with mine in an involuntary rhythm that pulled at the edges of my resolve. "Form slipping," I said, voice steady despite the heat rising between us. She paused at the top, bar balanced on her traps, sweat tracing rivulets down her neck. "Am I?" Her quip came low, laced with that defiant edge, eyes flicking to mine in the mirror. "Or are you just looking for an excuse to get closer?" The words pierced, not with malice, but with a raw honesty that exposed the isolation we both carried. The captain's burden of isolation, the rookie's fire born from being unseen. I felt my defenses thin, the stoic mask I'd worn for years cracking under her gaze. She wasn't just challenging my authority, she was seeing through it, to the loneliness I'd buried beneath layers of discipline. I stepped in then, hands guiding her hips to realign, the contact brief but searing. Her skin was warm, slick with effort, and my fingers hesitated a fraction too long, tracing the curve where muscle met bone. A jolt passed between us, electric and unspoken, the kind that hummed in the charged space of the room. The rules echoed in my mind like bars of a cage. No fraternization, no entanglements that could splinter the team. Our league thrived on unity, on the myth of unbreakable sisterhood. One whisper of impropriety, and the eclipse would shatter under scrutiny. Sponsors demanded purity, coaches enforced it with iron fists. Yet here, in this dim-lit sanctuary, her proximity amplified every forbidden impulse, the air thick with the scent of iron and exertion. She powered through the last rep, rising with a grunt that vibrated through me where our bodies nearly brushed. As she re-racked the bar, her shoulder grazed mine, accidental but lingering in its aftermath. We stood there, breaths mingling, the silence heavy with what neither would voice. "You're good at this," she said finally, wiping her face with the towel, her voice softer now, revealing glimpses of the vulnerability beneath her rebellion. "Keeping everyone in line. But who keeps you?" The question hung, piercing deeper, stirring the shared isolation I'd sensed in her earlier. The way she held herself apart, brilliant but adrift, her wit a shield against the world's judgments. I wanted to deflect, to retreat into Captain's protocol, but her eyes held mine, obsidian depths reflecting my own hidden aches. I adjusted her grip on the next set, fingers brushing hers over the knurled bar, the hesitation electric, a spark that traveled up my arm. Her calluses met mine, rough from the same battles on the pitch, and in that touch, something shifted, the power imbalance tilting, not toward dominance, but toward mutual unraveling. The gym's mirrors multiplied the moment, infinite versions of us, hands intertwined in correction, breath sinking in the quiet. Sweat beaded on her temples, mirroring the dampness at my collar. Our rhythms aligned, involuntary, pulling me toward the precipice. The rules caged us, yes, but her quips chipped at the bars, revealing the isolation we mirrored. Me, the unyielding leader hiding my queerness behind authority. Her, the prodigy, fighting visibility in a sport that demanded conformity. As the session wound down, the gym emptying further into night, she lingered by the mats, stretching with deliberate slowness. "One more set?" she asked. But it was more invitation than request, her eyes promising depths beyond the weights. The air cooled, but the tension simmered, drawing us toward uncharted territory. I nodded, the decision heavy, leading us into the late hours where confessions might slip free. The gym's lights dimmed further as the clock ticked past midnight, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the rubberized floor. We had pushed into one more set, then another, the weights forgotten in the pull of conversation that unfurled slowly, tentatively. Alara sat cross-legged on a bench, her back against the cool metal lockers, water bottle cradled in her hands like a talisman. I perched opposite, the space between us a charged void, the echoing vastness of the empty space amplifying every shift, every breath. Vulnerability seeped in with the quiet. Here, away from the team's clamor, the dim fluorescence revealed the raw edges we both concealed. She started with a sigh, heavy and unfiltered, her obsidian eyes fixed on the scuffed floor. "You know why I push so hard?" Her voice was low, threaded with the weight of unspoken histories. Back home, my family's got this map of expectations. Soccer prodigy, the golden ticket out of our nothing town. But it's more than that. They see the game as salvation, straight and narrow. Me? I'm the detour they pretend doesn't exist. She paused, twisting the cap on her bottle, the plastic creaking under her grip. Queer identity in a world of cleats and contracts. She didn't say it outright, but the ache was there, palpable, in the way her shoulders curved inward. Family pressures coiled around her like vines, demanding brilliance without the mess of truth. Her truth, hidden in the shadows of locker room glances and late-night doubts. I recognized it, that particular isolation. The rebellion not just against drills, but against erasure. My response came guarded, a mirror to her ache. Words measured to protect the walls I'd built so meticulously. "I get it. More than you think." The admission slipped out, reluctant, pulling from my own hidden past. The small-town upbringing where queerness was a whisper best silenced. The scholarships won on sheer will, burying longing under layers of stoicism. As captain, I'd mapped every vulnerability on the team, but mine stayed locked away. The eclipse demanded perfection, no cracks in the facade. Her gaze lifted then, searching, and in that dim light, I saw the parallel. Her fire against my ice, both forged in the same forge of concealment. Emotional cartography unfolded between us, tracing the power imbalance in our roles. the mentor's authority a shield, the rookie's defiance a key that threatened to unlock it all. She was under my guidance, yet in this echoing sanctuary, the lines blurred, her presence a force that redrew the terrain of my resolve. We talked deeper, voices weaving through the quiet hours, her stories of furtive relationships in youth leagues clashing with family silences, mine of the coach who once pulled me aside, warning against distractions that could end a career before it peaked. The air grew thicker, laced with the faint tang of sweat and rubber, our knees nearly brushing as she leaned forward. It's exhausting, isn't it? Pretending the field's the only place you can be free. Her words hung, a bridge across our shared ache, the vulnerability of professional sports where visibility was both armor and noose, queer athletes navigating PR minefields, team unity a fragile veil over personal storms. Then, a turning point. She recounted a botched pass from her European days, exaggerated for effect, her mimicry of the coach's fury so spot on that laughter bubbled up, surprising us both. Mine came first, a rare, unguarded sound that echoed off the walls, pulling one from her. Bright, unfiltered, shattering the tension like glass. Our eyes locked too long in the aftermath, the dim lights catching the spark in hers, a jolt that hummed through the space between. Time stretched, heavy with possibility, the power dynamic tilting further, her rebellion meeting my restraint in a silent standoff. But dawn loomed, and with it, the upcoming match against our fiercest rivals, demanding professional distance. We rose, the vulnerability folding back into resolve. Yet the night had shifted something irrevocable, propelling us toward the field's unforgiving glare. The stadium lights blazed like accusatory stars as we took the field for the match against the Vipers, our fiercest rivals. The air electric, with the roar of 5,000 fans packed into the stands. Pressure coiled in my gut, tighter than the laces on my cleats. This wasn't just a game. It was a proving ground for the Eclipse's season, every pass a thread in the tapestry of our survival. Sponsors watched from skyboxes, scouts scribbled notes, and I, as captain, bore the weight of orchestration, my vision the compass that guided us through the chaos. Ilara slotted into midfield, her presence a wild card amid the familiar formations, and as the whistle pierced the night, I felt the pull toward her, not just tactical, but deeper. The late-night confessions lingering like a bruise beneath my jersey. The first half unfolded in a frenzy of possession battles, the turf slick underfoot from an earlier drizzle, each sprint a test of will. I dropped deep to receive, scanning for openings, and there she was, Ilara, ghosting into space with that precognitive grace, her dark hair whipping in the wind. My pass found her boot unerringly, a weighted through ball that sliced the defense like a scalpel. She controlled it with one touch, her body language screaming trust, the kind we'd forged in shadowed gyms. It wasn't the first. Throughout the half, our interplay built, passes chaining in a rhythm that mirrored our synced breaths from weights, tactical synergy bleeding into personal. Her nods of acknowledgement across the pitch igniting a quiet thrill in my chest. The power imbalance hummed, me dictating from the back, her executing with rebellious flair. Yet each connection felt like a shared secret, vulnerability traded in the guise of strategy. Halftime came with us trailing 1-0, the locker room a cauldron of frustration and resolve. I paced, dissecting errors, my voice cutting through the murmurs to rally them. Stoic commands that masked the storm within. Ilara sat quietly, eyes on her taped ankles. But when our gazes met, a flicker passed. Unspoken pride in her nod. The second half erupted. We pressed high, my interceptions fueling counters, and then the moment. A corner swung in, chaotic and contested. Ilara burst from the pack, her header crashing past the keeper into the net. A triumphant goal that silenced the Vipers fans and ignited the Eclipse bench. From the sideline, subbed out with a minor knock, I watched her wheel away, arms raised, that crooked smile flashing under the floodlights. Pride swelled, fierce and unbidden, mingling with desire. Her form, powerful and unyielding, pulled at the longing I'd buried, the rules a distant echo amid the roar. Victory tasted of salt and exhilaration. 2-1 final. The final whistle, a release that sent us surging into celebratory chaos on the pitch. Hugs and high fives blurred boundaries. But in the crush, our paths crossed. Her hand clapping my shoulder, lingering a beat too long, eyes locking with that obsidian intensity. The contact seared, a jolt through the thin fabric, amplifying the ache of restraint. We funneled into the locker room, steam from showers mingling with laughter, towels snapping in jest. Amid the din, stolen glances darted like sparks, hers catching mine over a teammate's head. A silent question in the charged air. The space felt smaller, the walls closing in with the weight of what simmered. Her proximity a magnet, drawing me despite the crowd. But complication loomed in Coach Ramirez's post-game huddle, his face stern under the fluorescent buzz. Unity, ladies, that's what won it. No egos, no distractions fracturing us. His eyes swept the room, pausing on Ilara and me, the warning implicit. The league's code against internal romances wasn't just policy. It was the glue holding our image intact. PR nightmares waiting in the wings. Favoritism whispers could unravel sponsorships, exile us from the spotlight we'd clawed for. I nodded, composure a shield. But inside, the internal storm raged, longing simmering hotter, threatening the iron facade I'd maintained for years. Her goal replayed in my mind, not as captain's pride, but as the curve of her leap, the fire that mirrored my own suppressed heat. As the team dispersed, buzzing with wind's afterglow, Ilara winced, favoring her ankle in the corridor. The injury sidelined her abruptly, a sprain from that final press, drawing me closer in the trainer's call, proximity I couldn't refuse, the slow burn escalating toward inevitable collision. The trainer's room smelled of antiseptic and ice packs, a sterile cocoon tucked away from the locker room's fading echoes. Ilara limped in ahead of me, her usual stride reduced to a careful shuffle, the post-victory high dimmed by pain etching lines around her mouth. I followed without a word, the door clicking shut behind us, sealing out the team's dispersing chatter. Coach had nodded approval when I volunteered to assist, captain's duty, after all. But the truth twisted deeper, a pull I couldn't name, drawing me into this confined space where the air hung thick with unspoken possibilities. She eased onto the exam table, wincing as her foot touched the floor, and I moved to the sink, filling a basin with cool water, my hands steady despite the tremor building inside. "Sit," I said, voice low, guiding her leg onto the padded surface. Her ankle swelled already, a purple bloom under the skin from that final, desperate press for possession. I knelt before her, the position inverting our roles for a moment, captain at the feet of the rookie, vulnerability exposed in the fluorescent glare. My fingers, gentle as I could manage, probed the joint, testing for breaks amid her sharp intake of breath. The touch was clinical at first, wrapping the compress around the sprain, but intimacy crept in unbidden, the warmth of her calf against my palm, the subtle flex of muscle under my hold. I elevated her leg then, propping it on a stool, our faces level now, breaths mingling in the narrow space between. Her obsidian eyes held mine, not with defiance this time, but a quiet searching, the pain stripping away her edges. We talked as I worked, the conversation deepening like roots seeking water in parched soil. "This league," she murmured, gaze drifting to the posters of triumphant players on the walls. "It's a spotlight that burns if you're not careful. One wrong shadow and you're out, queer or not, visible or not. Her words unpacked fears I'd long mapped in myself. The terror of scrutiny in professional sports, where every goal celebrated unity, but personal truths threatened the facade. Sponsors craved the myth of flawless sisterhood. Coming out could mean endorsements vanishing, fans turning, the Eclipse's fragile empire crumbling under headlines. She spoke of European teams where whispers of her identity had already cost her starts. Family back home urging silence for the greater good. I listened, my hands lingering on her ankle, tracing the tape with absent care, sharing fragments of my own navigation, the hidden relationships sidelined for team harmony, the ache of invisibility that fueled my stoicism. The proximity amplified it all. Her knee brushing my arm as I adjusted the ice, our exhales sinking in the room's hush. The confined space felt like a sanctuary and a cage, walls pressing in with the weight of what simmered between us. Her scent, sweat and grass from the field, mingled with the antiseptic, pulling me closer. The power dynamic humming, my authority in this care, her trust yielding to it. Then, in that private moment, as my fingers stilled on her skin, she leaned forward slightly, breath warm against my ear. "Our rules don't apply when no one is watching," she whispered, the words a spark igniting the charged air, echoing the fracture I'd felt weeks ago in the weights. Time suspended, her nearness a profound ache, desire coiling tight in my chest, threatening to unravel the discipline I'd clung to. But restraint surged back, an iron reflex born of years enforcing boundaries. I pulled away, hands withdrawing as if burned, reconstructing the walls with a sharp nod. "Rest it. We'll reassess tomorrow." The ache lingered, a hollow in my core as I stood, the moment fracturing into professional distance. She watched me go, eyes unreadable, but the whisper hung, propelling us toward recovery sessions where the slow burn would only intensify, boundaries tested in the quiet hours ahead. Recovery sessions began at dawn, the field shrouded in mist that clung to the grass like unspoken regrets. Ilara's ankle had stabilized enough for light drills, but coach insisted on isolation. No team eyes, just me and her, one-on-one, under the guise of targeted rehab. I arrived early, cones scattered in precise patterns, the turf still cool and yielding under my cleats. She jogged up minutes later, tape glinting on her ankle, her stride cautious but determined, that rebel's fire undimmed. The isolation amplified everything. No teammates to buffer, no coach to mediate, just the vast expanse of green between us and the horizon, a canvas for the tension that had simmered since her whisper. We started with passing drills, simple at first, back and forth, building her confidence. But every corrective touch lingered, my hand on her shoulder to adjust her pivot, fingers pressing into the warmth of her jersey, electric trails fading slowly. Her defiance surfaced midway through as I called for controlled volleys. She unleashed one instead, fierce and arcing, clipping the crossbar with a thud that echoed across the empty stands. "That's not the point," I said, stepping closer, voice edged with authority. She turned, obsidian eyes narrowing, sweat already beading on her forehead despite the chill. "Maybe your point's too safe, Captain. Always playing it by the book. When does the game get to breathe?" The debate sparked then, charged words flying like errant shots, her arguing for instinct over structure, me countering with the fragility of team dynamics, the rules that bound us tighter than any net. But beneath the clash, vulnerability threaded through, her frustration born from years of being leashed, my stoicism a cage I'd chosen to protect us all. The power imbalance tilted with each retort, She challenged not to undermine, but to draw me out, her words peeling back layers I'd fortified against the world. The sun climbed higher, burning off the mist, highlighting the shared sweat that slicked our skin. Wind carried her scent, grass and salt, mingled with the faint citrus of her shampoo, whispering across the space between drills. We moved to agility ladders, her footwork recovering its poetry, but I guided her through each step, hands steadying her hips when the ankle twinged, the contact a profound jolt that hummed through us both. Proximity built the sensory tide, the sun warming our backs, casting long shadows that intertwined on the turf. Her breaths quickening with effort, syncing mine in an involuntary harmony. Isolation amplified it. The field's emptiness a mirror to our internal storms, every brush of arm against arm a reminder of the lines we towed. I corrected her stance again, palm flat against her lower back, feeling the flex of muscle, the heat radiating like a confession. Her body leaned into it fractionally, defiant yet yielding, the moment stretching until the wind tugged at us, pulling back to reality. Emotional shifts came in veiled admissions, words wrapped in the language of the game. During a water break, bottles shared from the same cooler, she wiped her mouth and met my gaze. You see it too, don't you? The way we move together, it's not just passes. Her voice was low, the admission hanging like dew on the cones, mutual attraction couched in metaphor, profound and undeniable. I nodded, throat tight, the ache of longing a physical weight in my chest. It's dangerous, I replied, but the words lacked conviction, revealing the crack in my resolve. The captain's duty warring with the pull toward her, a sanctuary in her rebellion. We were two forces converging, her fire melting my ice, the isolation forging something deeper, more perilous. Complication arose unbidden. A teammate's car idling at the field's edge. Leah, our midfielder, waving casually but her eyes sharp, lingering too long on our clustered forms. She drove off with a honk, but suspicion seeded the air. External pressure coiling like the wind shifting direction. Whispers could spread. The team thrived on trust, but one hint of favoritism, of something more, and the Eclipse's unity would fracture under league scrutiny. I ended the session abruptly, the sun now harsh overhead. But the burn lingered, propelling us toward the away game where hotel rooms would test these boundaries further. Isolation turning intimate. The away game against the Stormbreakers had us shuttled into a nondescript chain hotel on the city's outskirts, the kind with beige carpets and fluorescent hums that swallowed individuality. Logistics conspired against us, overbooked rooms from a convention bleed, leaving Ilara and me assigned to a shared suite. Two queens separated by a flimsy partition that did nothing to muffle the night's undercurrents. Neutral ground, Coach had called it, a practical fix for the rookies' lingering rehab needs. But as we wheeled our duffels inside, the door clicking shut behind us, it transformed into something far more confining. A sanctuary laced with the peril of exposure. Walls pressing in like the league's unspoken edicts. The space was sparse, a mini-fridge humming softly, nightstands with identical lamps casting warm pools on the bedspreads. The air-conditioned chill doing little to cool the simmer that had followed us from the field. We unpacked in silence at first. The ritual of hanging jerseys and laying out recovery gear, a thin veil over the tension, coiling tighter. Dinner with the team had been obligatory, pasta and strategy talk in the lobby. But now, alone in this borrowed limbo, late-night conversations unfurled like threads pulled from a fraying seam. Ilara claimed the bed nearer the window, propping herself against pillows with her tablet, ostensibly reviewing footage, but her eyes drifted to me more than the screen. I sat cross-legged on mine, towel drying my hair from the post-flight shower, the faint scent of hotel soap mingling with the lingering grass from our travel day drills. "This league's a machine," she said finally, voice threading through the quiet, her accent softening the edges of her words. "PR fears everything real. Queer stories get sanitized or buried. One photo, one rumor, and you're the distraction, not the star." Her admission unpacked layers I'd only glimpsed before. The terror of visibility in a sport that commodified unity, where personal longings clashed against the facade of flawless teamwork. Sponsors demanded the eclipse as a beacon of empowerment, untainted. Any hint of internal entanglement, and we'd be reduced to tabloid fodder. Careers eclipsed by scandal. I mirrored her, words spilling, guarded but inevitable. The partition between beds a mere suggestion against the pull drawing us closer. It's the hold it has, the way it maps your worth to silence. I've longed for more, but the risks, they chain you. Personal aches surfaced in the dim light. My own buried desires, shaped by years of captaining through concealment. The queerness I'd compartmentalized to safeguard the team's image. We spoke of family echoes, too. Hers urging the prodigy path sans complications, mine echoing with small-town cautions that still whispered in quiet moments. The talks deepened, vulnerability a shared current, her obsidian eyes reflecting my unrest, the power imbalance softening into mutual reckoning. The room felt smaller, the air charged with the weight of what we withheld, longings coiling like the sheets we'd yet to disturb. Sleep came fitfully. A nightmare jolted her awake around 2, a sharp gasp cutting the darkness. I rose without thinking, crossing the scant space to her side, the carpet soft underfoot. She trembled slightly, sheets tangled around her legs, and I sat on the bed's edge, hand hovering before settling on her shoulder, comforting, tentative, the touch implying depths unspoken. "Just a dream," she murmured, but her body shifted toward mine, aligning in the shadowed intimacy, our forms fitting with an ease that betrayed the boundaries we'd towed all season. The embrace unfolded slowly, my arm around her back, her head against my collarbone, breath sinking in the hush. Physical closeness veiled in solace, yet profound, her warmth seeping through the thin barrier of sleepwear, a jolt that hummed through my veins. Tension peaked as her hand found mine, fingers intertwining with deliberate pressure. The contact, a question poised on the edge of utterance. "These rules," she whispered, voice husky from sleep. "How long do they get to hold us?" The words pierced, desire warring with the internal turmoil roiling in my chest, career risks looming like storm clouds, the eclipse's unity fragile under potential fracture, one leaked moment spelling exile for us both. I held her gaze in the lamplight's glow, the ache of physical sanctuary and cage, our hands a silent vow amid the peril. Dawn filtered through the curtains, forcing separation as team routine beckoned. Breakfast huddles, bus rides, the return to watchful eyes that would heighten our secrecy, propelling the burn toward its inevitable crest. The championship qualifier against the Thunderbolts unfolded under a sky bruised with impending rain, the stadium a coliseum of throbbing anticipation. 20,000 voices, a relentless tide crashing against our resolve. As captain, I anchored the backline, every interception a calculated defiance of the pressure mounting like storm clouds. This match wasn't mere survival. It was the Eclipse's legacy on the line. Promotion to the elite division dangling like a precarious promise. Ilara had returned to full form, her ankle a faint memory, slotted into attacking midfield with that precognitive fire, now tempered by our shadowed bond. The first half dragged in stalemate, defenses ironclad, but the second ignited chaos. A counter sliced through us, the ball arcing toward their striker in a lethal break. Ilara lunged to intercept, her boot clipping the turf awkwardly under the weight of exhaustion and expectation. A critical error. The pass evading her by inches, leaving our goal exposed. The shot rocketed past our keeper. 1-0 down, the crowds roar a judgment, her face crumpling in the distance as she rose, obsidian eyes haunted by failure. Without hesitation, I surged forward on the next play, rallying the press, my clearance finding her in a desperate overlap. She threaded it back, our interplay a frantic redemption, culminating in my driven cross that she volleyed home. Equalizer, the net rippling like a released breath. The save wasn't just tactical, it was a lifeline, our gazes locking mid-celebration, a silent acknowledgement of the deeper currents pulling us through the crisis. Post-game, the locker room simmered with fractured relief, the draw forcing overtime nerves, but accusations erupted like fissures in stone. Leah cornered me by the benches, her voice a whip crack amid the steam and shouts. "You're favoring her, Captain. Everyone sees it. Those passes, the way you cover her mistakes, it's not team, it's personal." Teammates murmured assent, eyes darting between us, the air thickening with suspicion born from our stolen proximities. The hotel whispers, the isolated drills now fodder for doubt. Elara stood apart, towel draped over her shoulders, her defiance cracking under the weight. But I felt the confrontation force truth to the surface, the power imbalance inverting as vulnerability demanded reckoning. "It's strategy," I countered, voice steady but laced with the ache of exposure. "But if you must know, it's trust, something this team needs more than suspicion." The words hung, partial confession veiled in defense, yet they ignited the room's undercurrents, Coach's stern glance signaling the peril. Favoritism rumors could splinter unity, invite league probes into our distractions, the Eclipse's image fracturing under the glare of scrutiny we couldn't afford. Overtime bled into penalties, the shootout a gauntlet of nerves under floodlights that cast elongated shadows across the pitch. We advanced on a final save, the stadium erupting, but victory felt hollow amid the accusations' echo. As the team funneled out, celebrations masking the rift, Elara and I lingered in the emptying stands, the concrete steps a desolate amphitheater, echoes of cheers fading into night. Rain began to patter, cool and insistent, blurring the lines between us. "They see it," she said, voice raw, stepping closer until the space charged with the storm's prelude. "The favoritism, because it's real, because of this." Her hand brushed mine, tentative, the touch a spark amid the downpour, pulling me toward the precipice. The climactic whisper returned, her breath warm against my ear as thunder rumbled. "Our rules don't apply when no one is watching." In that empty stadium, the words dissolved the barriers. I turned, cupping her face, our lips meeting in a kiss that shattered the suppression, a sensory release. Soft at first, then deepening with the storm's fury. Rain slicked our skin, mingling with tears of relief and fear. Her mouth yielding yet fierce, tasting of salt and exertion. The suppressed emotions breaking like waves, longing uncoiling in my chest. A profound ache blooming into exhilaration. Her fingers tangling in my hair, bodies pressing in urgent harmony. Time fractured. The world narrowing to this forbidden sanctuary. Power yielding to mutual unraveling. The kiss a vow etched in the downpour's rhythm. Immediate fallout crashed in the aftermath. Guilt twisting with the thrill as we pulled apart. Breaths ragged. The stadium's vastness a witness to our transgression. Exhilaration hummed through my veins, her eyes mirroring the storm within. joy laced with terror. The career risks now indelible. Whispers that could exile us both. Yet the connection anchored us. A quiet defiance amid the rain's hush. Transitioning toward resolution in the shadowed aftermath, where we'd navigate the watchful eyes, forging a path through the uncertainty. The days following the qualifier blurred into a tense recalibration. The Eclipse's advancement to the elite division a hollow triumph, overshadowed by the fracture we'd ignited. Private reckonings unfolded in stolen fragments. Whispers in the equipment shed, coded texts amid strategy emails. Each moment, a navigation through the team's watchful eyes that now felt sharper, more probing. Leah's accusations had seeded doubt, murmurs rippling through practices like undercurrents. But we moved with deliberate caution. My captain's authority, a shield we wielded jointly. Her rebellion tempered into subtle alliance. No overt confrontations. Instead, a quiet deflection, redirecting suspicions toward tactical necessities. The bond we'd forged in rain-slicked shadows becoming our unspoken strategy. The League's code loomed larger, its prohibitions a specter in every huddle. But in these private reckonings, we mapped a path through the peril. Vulnerability no longer a weakness, but a shared compass. Deeper bonds solidified in the quiet aftermath, our conversations evolving from veiled admissions to a shared vision for defying the norms that caged us. Late nights in the film room, ostensibly reviewing plays, became sanctuaries where we unpacked the weight of it all. The queerness that professional sports commodified into invisibility. The PR machinery that polished our triumphs while erasing personal truths. We could change it, she said one evening, her voice a low current in the darkened space, obsidian eyes alight with that fire I'd come to crave. Not shatter the eclipse, but redefine it. Show them unity includes this. Her words stirred something profound, a vision of defiance not solitary, but intertwined, advocating from within, perhaps a quiet coming out post-season, or mentoring others through the minefields we'd traversed. I traced the lines of her hand absent-mindedly, the touch a grounding force, our fingers mapping futures uncertain, yet charged with possibility. The power imbalance that once defined us dissolved further, her brilliance illuminating paths I'd never charted alone, my stoicism yielding to a partnership where rebellion and resolve converged. We spoke of risks unflinchingly, the potential loss of endorsements, the team's fracture under scrutiny. But in that honesty, a deeper intimacy bloomed, not in grand gestures, but in the profound peace of being seen, truly, without the masks. Emotional payoff settled like a hard-won truce. Vulnerability no longer an ache, but a sanctuary we cultivated amid the chaos. Practices resumed their rhythm, but now laced with undercurrents only we perceived. A past that lingered a fraction longer, her nod carrying layers of affirmation. The future remained uncertain, shadows of exposure hovering. Yet the charge between us electrified every moment, turning restraint into a deliberate dance. One afternoon during casual drills under a forgiving sun, the team scattered in loose formation, laughter echoing off the stands. I called for a water break, and as others dispersed, Alara fell into step beside me, our hands brushing, then intertwining briefly behind the bench, hidden by the angle of crates. Her palm against mine was warm, calloused, a silent vow etched in sweat and secrecy. The contact brief but indelible, a final image of us poised on the edge, hands linked in defiance. The world narrowed to that touch, the field's expanse a backdrop to our quiet revolution. Ongoing secrecy both our sanctuary and the risk that kept the burn alive, propelling us forward into whatever storm awaited. Their gaze met across the field, a silent promise threading through the drills. Rules be damned in the spaces between. If this slow burn pulled you in, subscribe for more forbidden connections in unexpected places.